Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Lewicki. The EU's Foreign Affairs Council is gathering in Brussels to discuss ongoing global security challenges led by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. With Kiev's Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov on board via video link, European foreign affairs chiefs had a chance to examine further options to help Ukraine continue the fight. But can this alone bring a significant breakthrough? And will the European Union take bolder decisions with Hungary's Viktor Orbán now out of the picture? Joining us here today is Dr. Eoin McNamara, researcher at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Always great to be on TVP World.
So let's begin with the fundamental question. Do you think the decision-making process is going to be easier now that we do not have the major outlier in European foreign policy in the form of Viktor Orbán? Do you think this is going to change a lot in the next coming weeks and months?
I think it will certainly take away a lot of the frustration around EU decision-making, a lot of the blockages, and it will certainly make it easier to reach consensus on key strategic decisions relating EU policy to Ukraine, because Viktor Orbán was certainly a thorn in the EU side. That said, there are always issues in EU decision-making, because of course EU decision-making runs on the basis of multi-level governance when we look at the EU's wider institutions, and of course must need consensus within the Council of the EU for other decisions. So the decision-making process is always complicated. We should keep that in mind. And there are some problematic countries on Ukraine, issue by issue, still within the EU fold. If you think of Robert Fico in Slovakia, for instance, and issue by issue, we've had blockages in the past, such as with discussions over the use of frozen Russian assets to support defense in Ukraine as well. We've had other Western European countries express concerns there. So on a regular basis, this should make EU decision-making easier. You know, the switch from Orbán to Magyar in Budapest, but issue by issue, still expect a bit of a grind to go.
So what do you think is the single biggest challenge? If you were to think about a single bold decision that the European Union should have taken, perhaps a long time ago, and still has the opportunity to do that, especially in the context of what's going on with the transatlantic relations, with the United States changing its role, of course, selling weapons to Ukraine, but no longer providing them. What do you think would be the main issue that the European Union should try to address with regards to providing support to Kiev?
I think it's more money, more resources in the long term. I think that's most realistic from where the European Union can have the most impact. And of course, the most controversial issue around that question is what I previously mentioned, the use of frozen Russian assets to support defense in Ukraine. But of course,
that's a slightly forgotten issue, isn't it? I mean, you know, it was not because of Hungary, it was because of Belgium, which of course makes it very inconvenient, right?
Yeah, it shows, I mean, we have a lot of these issues around Europe. It shows the interdependence, the negative interdependence that Russia always exploits for its own end. Belgium, I mean, they're worried about the precedent it might set and the hole it might leave in their investment banking industry. So they raised the concern about it. So this is, I mean, this is where we need to be very, very cautious in Europe in the future. What are we connecting ourselves to when we take investments from states that could potentially turn hostile? We've seen it also, different issue, but we've seen it also in my own country, in Ireland. We've the largest alumina refinery in Ireland, but or in Europe, in Ireland. We have the largest alumina refinery in Europe, in Ireland. But we've seen investigative reporting say that alumina refinery, which is owned by Russia's Rusal, is producing alumina refined in Ireland, shipped to Russia, and then taken over by Russian weapons contractors to manufacture weapons that kill Ukrainians. But of course, the big question around that in the European Union is, can we sanction that? Because all of Europe relies a lot on alumina coming out of that refinery, produced by a Rusal-owned plant. So they have leverage in different ways over the European Union, some financial, some manufacturing, and we need to de-risk ourselves from that negative interdependence, be that Russia primarily, but also other potential strategic competitors of the West.
And that is an excellent point. Dependence on Russian uranium from Rosatom would probably be another, a more commonly cited one at that. Wouldn't you say that right now it is rather ironic that we're talking about money, right? A couple of years ago, we would have said long-range weapons for Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is producing its own weapons, so it wants to engage in cooperation with us. Sometimes it actually becomes a security donor to certain countries, like in the Gulf, for example. We had, following the war with Iran, the drone systems being sold to a variety of countries there. Would you say that perhaps this is a good development in a way, also for the European side, because we have European countries like Germany engaging in military cooperation with Ukrainian companies, helping them manufacture equipment in larger quantities and obtaining the know-how. And this is taking place on a bilateral basis, so we don't need a decision by all of the European Union. Instead, we have the defense industries of individual countries seeing an opportunity there which is mutually beneficial.
Yes, and I believe we've seen industrial cooperation between Ukraine and Germany. We've seen plans to ramp that up in recent days emerge. Of course, you know, I don't think the conversation on weapons deliveries to Ukraine from the West should disappear. I mean, there are still numerous technically or technologically advanced weapon systems that we could lend to Ukraine, be it the European Union, primarily the United States, that could support the war effort in Ukraine much better. I mean, you'll think of Patriot and Patriot systems that take out drones and shield Ukrainian cities. These are very, very sophisticated systems. They're not made in complete form, at least, in Ukraine just yet. And we need to ramp up our supplies in the West to get them to Ukraine. And also, I mean, something that politically cushioned things, at least at the beginning, when the second Trump term began, was a lot of EU money was used to buy advanced weapons from the US that we subsequently transferred to Ukraine. So that dimension of the conversation is there. But yes, on other systems, definitely drone systems and a few other systems with ammunition, things like that. Ukraine has definitely become a very, very innovative leader. And it has been said, I saw prominent Nordic politicians say it recently, that in terms of this defense cooperation, this military cooperation, this cooperation in the most up-to-date modes of warfare in Europe, and particularly along Europe's eastern flank, Baltic states, Poland, into the Nordic region, Finland, Sweden, we need Ukraine as much as Ukraine needs us in Europe. And I hope different modes, different institutions on how we can best harvest this knowledge and how we can forge a very close bilateral cooperative operation with Ukraine. An operation, I mean cooperation with Ukraine in these areas. All of this needs to start now. Before we ramp up the process to bring Ukraine closer to the EU and NATO with an eventual view on membership.
Which brings me to my next question. Shouldn't we expedite this process, at least when it comes to EU membership? There has been a lot of scepticism from some unexpected directions recently. But since we've established that it is not only that Ukraine needs us, we need Ukraine as well, wouldn't it be wise to actually rethink this approach and perhaps allow Kiev to join in faster than anticipated?
We need to give Kiev every opportunity we can afford to help Ukraine reach its potential so that it gets that fast track to European Union membership. And I'm a big believer in this. I work in Helsinki now, but I did my PhD at the University of Tartu in Estonia, and I taught many young, bright Ukrainian students. So you see that generational change that you would have seen in Poland 20 years ago, in the Baltic states 20 years ago, and even further back than that, when communism collapsed and the Baltic states restored their independence, that younger generation propelled the country forward, and it said no more to the communist era, to the Soviet era corruption. We want a country clean of that, and we've seen that in Ukraine at the Maidan and with the revolution of dignity. So, I mean, that generational shift that we've seen in the neighboring region is also there in Ukraine to kind of clean the country of all the corruption we have seen. That needs to go and build new institutions. And the European Union needs to support this civil society. And I think it's this civil society that is Ukraine's fast track.
So it's a window of opportunity for a brighter future for the entire region.
Military cooperation and economic cooperation.
Yes. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Hopefully, we'll be able to discuss this further on. Eoin McNamara was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Jonasz Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.